You are an Iron Man!
Neil McCready, you and I both completed the 70.3 in the Tri-Limits race there recently up in Dungannon. I think you were probably in the car and halfway down the road by the time I crossed the line. So, firstly, welcome to the podcast and well done on your recent Tri-Limits.
Yeah, thanks, Mickey. Thanks for the invite. It's great to be here.
So you had a real good race there in the Tyrone 70.3.
Yeah. So look, I was chasing the time, really, not a person on course or a place. So for a couple of years, I've been trying to hit going under sub 5. And for one reason or another, mainly kind of injury, illness kind of thing, leading up to previous races, I just haven't managed to do that. So I actually had 5:03 last year, but couldn't have squeezed any drop of anything, more drop of energy out. That was me kind of maxed out throughout the race. Whereas the other Saturday was hit the numbers reasonably controlled as much as you can be during a race. And when I came out of T2, after having a really good bike, didn't have a great swim, probably a couple of minutes slower than I was expecting, but I had a really good bike. I was able to sort of get that time back and come out of T2 with a reasonably comfortable target to hit on the run. It was probably 12 or 13 minutes past my PB, which I'd hit earlier on this year. Maybe not going to hit the PB running off the bike, but I knew I was well within there to do that. So I kind of just settled into target pace, and actually after about a mile I thought maybe just drop it back a little bit here, plant a bit of time in the bag. I suffer the odd time from a bit of sort of foot pain which comes on, and it can be quite erratic at times, and it did. So I've always found the faster I run, the more chance of the pain is. So I just knocked it back a little bit. Pain did come around 8.5 miles. I had to kind of manage up a little bit of walk run. But again, no time was in the bag there. I came across the line with 3 minutes to spare, sort of 4:57. So I did have a slight panic with about a mile to go. I'd made a little miscalculation and then really lifted the pace sort of last mile and a half. But I had that energy there to be able to do that, and then realised as I got closer to the line, you're no problem here at all. And delighted to kind of get that target hit. So that was a big tick.
That's brilliant. So from 3 minutes over to 3 minutes under, a big swing of 6 minutes. We were very lucky and fortunate on the day with regards to the wind as well. It was a fairly calm day, and I think everybody had a better bike. I know I certainly had a better bike leg than I was anticipating. I suppose it just goes to show you, there's even if you do the same race year on year in, it's never the same race.
Yeah. No, that's it. The conditions on the day can be completely different. I think, chatting to Mark, the race director, who I know, he says a couple of years previous to that there was monsoon rain and they were dragging people off the course and stuff. So it just shows you, and even on some parts of the course it was dry, and other parts of the course it was some sort of monsoon weather. So look, you can get sort of patches of different types of weather there. We were pretty, I would say, almost perfect conditions on the day. The sun did come out and it did get pretty warm towards sort of maybe the second half of the run, but it was just a matter of keeping cool there. But, dousing ourselves in water. Had a running cap on, which was good as well, to sort of for a little bit of shade and just keep hydrated really throughout that run. So look, conditions were good. Different format for the swim start with a mass start. That maybe didn't help me because I just couldn't get into the rhythm really. At points I was just trying to get on people's feet, and then it was moving about and switching from bilateral to breathing to the right and stuff. So I felt like I just couldn't get into sort of a nice rhythm to sort of the pace it could be. But look, I only lost a couple of minutes on it. I was able to get them back in the bike. So overall, delighted with the time. So
good man, and well done. Just whenever you mentioned, I know we're probably just going to sidetrack a wee bit here. What's your view on the mass start? I know I've been in a few races where we've had mass starts, I've had a few races. The most recent one here in the Oma Triathlon Club, tried a lock there last week. Had we just all filtered through in a big long stream and hit into the water, similar to an Ironman start. Do you prefer that kind of drip in, or have you got a?
Yeah, well, I
Did you
suppose
feel like
like
the mass start kind of knocked you off a wee bit then, from what you're saying?
it perhaps didn't. It didn't. Maybe that just wasn't the reason for it. Maybe just on the day I just swim, I just couldn't get into that rhythm. But going from pre-COVID, where a lot of the races were mass starts, and then I think COVID and certainly with the Ironman stuff pushed them into like kind of bringing people into the water 6 at a time, maybe 5 or 6 seconds apart, as opposed to hitting the gun off and 2,000 or 3,000 people, going in the water. And I've never, to be honest with you, never experienced that because my first Ironman was post COVID. And my first open water race actually came back to 2018 was Crooked Lake, and had a panic attack. I was pulled in a safety boat. So now I've come from, and we'll touch on it maybe later on, but I've come from a zero swimming background, so learned through a try program. But I had a pretty horrendous experience of my first mass start like that. So personally, I would maybe prefer the more, you let people in 6 at a time or so, whatever like that. So I'd raced a couple of weeks previous Beyond the Wall down in Castle Warder, which was a Downs triathlon club race, and it was the same. They were putting people in 3 or 4 at a time, and like different things suit different people, and people like different things. Maybe it's better if you're thinking about racing people, you just know when the gun goes, everyone has the same start time. Is maybe good for that bit of it, where you could be racing somebody and maybe in a sprint triathlon coming in and busting yourself, and they've been out of the water. They started 30 seconds ahead of you or something like that. So you're not racing them on the course. You're kind of racing them against the clock kind of thing. So pluses and minuses with things like that. For our own club race, we just done 2 separate waves and gun goes. And, so we put people like, you were sub 15, you were in the first wave. And it was actually more of a standing mass start. So we kind of had people up to their waist and then away they went. So they weren't floating about in the water too much, and we were in, it's good to get in the water and we get that acclimatization and stuff, but again, if you're not a confident swimmer and you're floating about and then all of a sudden it's the washing machine as well as it's known as, and arms, legs, elbows going everywhere, it can put people off, but there's pluses and minuses to both, so.
It's just an interesting topic. I know we hadn't done it recently, but it's probably something that we should maybe actually reintroduce to the open water training within the club, is that mass start training, so that people are kind of clued into what that feels like. Because if you've never had that, if you've never experienced it and you don't really know what it feels like until the day, you might be leaving it to the last. You might have wished that you had experience of it on a smaller, safer scale than in a big race with a couple of hundred people, because it can be quite intimidating if you get caught up in the middle of that sort of.
Absolutely.
It's just a frenzy of arms and feet, and it can be quite disorientating. It can be quite intimidating.
And even in the more sort of control starts, you can still get a wallop in the head, at times. And actually coming out about 50 metres out of coming into Castle Ward, I was just about to come out of the water, about 50 metres out, and I got an elbow right into my goggle, and it just like sucked. Because I couldn't see for the last sort of 50 metres out of one eye, just because everyone's kind of congregating towards the swim exit. So it's not to say that one is maybe sort of safer than the other, or you're going to get less battering than the other. It just depends. When you're going around boys and stuff like that, people naturally just you're grouping together and people are slowing down trying to get around them. So you're always going to get that. The swimming is a bit of a contact sport at times, So
it's just an interesting topic. So you've already mentioned Ironman. So I mean, let's just keep it going. So we're talking. You've done your 70.3 there, and you've completed 2 Ironman events. Talk me through your first Ironman and the lead up to that, and kind of your memories as you're recounting it. Sort of what are you taking from it?
Yeah, well, the first one was due to be in 2020, but COVID had knocked that back initially a year to 21, and then really travel restrictions. So it was Copenhagen, so travel restrictions getting in the Denmark at that time were chopping and changing quite a bit. I'd wanted to bring the family with me, we just to try and well, it's a bit of support and to experience the same thing that I was experiencing there, and I took a decision really to defer it to 2022 just because there was so much uncertainty around that. So a little bit frustrated, and I've been training in 2021 probably for about 4 months, 5 months, and then had to pull the plug, and then starting again, end of 21 into 22 to give yourself a really good run up to it. And you get about 4 or 5 months in, and then you're pulling the plug again on it. So I was kind of chomping at the bit by the time I come around to 2022. Had a reasonable sort of good training block before without many issues, apart from a hip injury, which kind of curtailed my running a little bit. So my longest run before Copenhagen was probably about 15 miles. And I'd never done a marathon before. I'd only been up to a half marathon. So anything past 15, 16 miles on the day was into the unknown a little bit. And I took a coach on, David, who had helped me through, and had suggested that just because of the injury and first marathon would go for a run 9, walk 1, which is a reasonably sort of common approach to some first timers, in terms of that marathon bit. And yeah, so on the day, travel to Copenhagen, and the city itself was great. It's really easy to get around. It's a split transition, so the swim is down at a place called Amager Strand there. So on the bike there, and then T2 is in the sort of city centre. So the swim on the day was just perfect. I mean, I just followed the toes around the whole way, come out, and it felt like I'd done a couple of 100 metres, just sort of glided around it. It's a really, really nice swim. It's a really good first time swim. So it's in saltwater lagoon, but it's completely protected, so there's no chance of any chop or anything like that. Out onto the bike, it's a fairly fast bike course. There's no sort of big climbs to speak of. Some rolling hills in it, but nothing, no big climbs. 2-loop course. You go up the coast. I think they've changed it actually now. You kind of come down the coast. It's kind of reversed. And a really good bike, went a bit quicker than I was expecting. And and then onto the run. So it just had good nutrition on the bike, so energy wise, all that was kind of good. And out onto the run, and it started getting really warm. And then I was probably so it's a 4-lap course, just over 10k per loop. I was probably about halfway around the second lap, and I started feeling my back sort of blocking up a little bit, or just really sort of getting a bit of pain in it. And then all of a sudden, I got this shooting pain in it, and it just brought me to stop. Couldn't walk, couldn't run, and I just thought, this is it. That's all over. You start getting through, because the whole day is you're just up and down emotions like a roller coaster, and this was. You think you're kind of half thinking around the first lap, this is great, just get round it, and then all of a sudden something like that hits you, and actually came across my wife and the kids quite quickly after that, and I've seen me walking and struggling, and I just said, I'm going to have to bin this. I can hardly walk, and just as I was sort of saying that, there was a guy from Olympian come past me, Guy Peter, who had met randomly up in Sheephaven in the Harbour Bar after the race a few months earlier. And that's always a good kind of, you see a lot of people doing that as a warm up for Copenhagen. So we just chatting, I'll maybe see you out there. I'm actually seeing him in the airport and chatted away and whatever. And he even passed me and he says, what's wrong? He says, my back's wrong. He says, and he just handed me a couple of ibuprofen. And I took them, and about 5 months later, I could feel something working. I was able to get walking on, and then all of a sudden I was on the go again. So it was like kind of relief. And so lap 2 and 3 were a real sort of struggle. I certainly had to drop the pace away down. And then I think once you sort of start that last lap, you just know I actually knew from lap 2 I could walk this whole thing if I wanted to, or if I needed to, and still finish under the 17 hours. But obviously I didn't want to do that. I'll be a long day out, so I was able to do that. Get the walk run going again. I actually had that plumbed into my watch as a training element on it. So I put in 5 hours, run 9, walk 1. So it just beeped every 9 minutes. And then so I was just controlling it. So it just wasn't looking at my watch all the time trying to work out 9 minutes and 1 minute. It was just going. So that was really, really good in terms of just managing that. And then, yeah, just the last lap of just, you get chatting away to people on the run. You try and keep people going, encouraging people. There's people there from, I think there's people there from Momers, people there from the Pike Kickers, there's people there from Olympians. So look, all local people, and then you get chatting to other people from Sweden or Netherlands or whatever else. Everyone's in the same boat. They're all struggling, whether it's their second, third, or fourth lap. And next thing you know, I'm turning right down that. So obviously most of these races are multi-lap, and you're turning left or turning right away from the finishing chute. Those 3 times or whatever it is before you get your little band for each lap. And just as I turned on that red carpet, you just know that's it. I've done it, kind of a thing. And as I'm running down it, I was a wee bit spaced out, to be honest with you. I was just a wee bit low on energy, and it was a bit surreal. And as it got towards that finishing line, my whole body I felt like my head was going to explode. It was just like this mass of, I think it was the relief and elation kind of mixed into one, and I came across the line, I let out this massive, massive roar. I got actually a couple of really, really good official photographs of it. So that was really good, and the family were there, wife and kids were there, and got a bit emotional. Not embarrassed to say, because it was just I'd never done anything like I'd never done a marathon, never done anything sort of big in terms of that kind of physical or athletic achievement or anything like that. And I just walking on cloud 9 then for days after it. You just when you do your first massive event like that, it it does really impact you, for a number of days, and I just thought, when's the next one, kind of a thing. I need to do this again. It's probably the worst thing to do straight after a big event, is try and commit to another one. You kind of need to bring it down a little bit, and because it is a big commitment. The training block there, you could be up to 15, 16 hours a week. Some people do a lot more, but you kind of need to maybe commit to that, certainly in the last couple of months, really. I wasn't really shooting for a time at all. I just didn't want to be in pain. I wanted to enjoy it. Where it took me 12, 13 hours, whatever it was, to get around it. I just wanted to come across that line and I've enjoyed the experience. Not be on my hands and knees almost, as you see at times, and crawling across that line. So, and lucky enough, I was able to do that. That experience will live with me forever. I always say to people, if you could bottle that feeling of coming across in your first Ironman and sell it, you'd be a millionaire. It's hard, really. It's going to be really hard to replicate that. So
it's an amazing feeling, and I think the way you've described it there is putting the hairs in the back of my neck up again, just kind of thinking about my own experience. But I guess there's the sense of achievement, having done such a mammoth event. Getting across that line, there's a great emotional moment that you have personally as well, but by thinking, oh my God, I've done that, I can do anything now. And there's also a huge release that you've, because of the amount of training that we've done to get to the start line, and there's always that worry in the back of your head that you're not going to finish. And then whenever you do finish, I think you're thinking to yourself, well, there's a huge emotional surge that says, I have made so many sacrifices to get to this finish line, and then that all comes out too. So it's just a tsunami of emotions, like.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, the commitment as well, and the family. I mean, I always say to people, if you're thinking about doing something like this, you kind of need to sit down with your nears and dears and say, look, this is what I'm going to be doing. There's going to be times I'm going to be away at 7 o'clock on a Sunday and away for 7, 8 hours, maybe if I'm doing a bike on a long run. I am at times going to be quite fatigued, maybe a bit grumpy and all this kind of stuff. But, the end goal is whatever it's going to be, whether it's marathon, Ironman, whatever sort of ultra stuff that people are doing, So I think it's important. And I had the support of my family to be able to do that. And it makes it so much easier, when the alarms are going off at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5:45 to get to the pool and all this kind of stuff, So I think when they see and experience that, when you've come across that finish, and I think they get an appreciation of, the commitment that you've put in and everything else around that. So, it's a team effort almost, and I'm keen to stress that to people, whether it's your coach, your family, friends, whatever else, club mates. It's really hard to do something like this on your own. So if you have people that can help you along, even if it's just a support, even if it's people going out doing long bikes with you, long runs, whatever else, club sessions in the pool, whatever, all that kind of helps, And to do this, you don't do anything like this on your own, or if you do, it's extremely kind of difficult, and you need to be sort of highly motivated to do that. So those people give you a bit of accountability as well at times, particularly the coach if you're paying for someone to help you along. It could be that time you wake up on a Sunday morning, maybe rain's hitting the trees, and I have a 5 hour bike to do here and an hour and a half kind of brick run. Those are the days when, I think that motivation there, even if it's not there, you need that bit of accountability and stuff, and that, whether it's coach or family, whatever else you've seen you get through it. I think that definitely makes a difference and helps.
Absolutely, and sound advice. And those days that you're talking about are the days that you really, really need to get up. Those are the days where you have to show up for yourself, because there would be nothing. I have always this notion that if the weather's really, really bad, I have to get out on that, because on the day it could be just as bad. And I'll put myself through painful training runs or inclines or whatever it is. I'll go for a swim in the local lake here. I know it doesn't really begin to even replicate the sea in any way properly, but I prefer swimming in the lake whenever it is quite choppy, because on the day, if it's going to be choppy, you don't want to be training on a nice glass perfect surface, and then on the day there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing into your face. You need to be able to experience that. You need to know what it's like to get that wee slap on the cheek from a wee wave coming in at you, and cycling and running in the rain, handling the bike in the wet. All those things are
exactly. Even I done my bike runs, multi loops, for a reason, more of that mental preparation. So not going out and doing a big one single 100-mile loop. I done maybe 3 33s or 2 50s or something like that. And I remember actually the first loop of one of them, I think it was probably my last 100-mile one. The first loop was horrific. Rain like you wouldn't believe. And I, come back to the house, refill the bottles, get a couple of more gels, practicing that kind of, you're coming along to a feed station kind of thing. Wasn't sitting down, getting a cup of tea and back out again. No, I was straight in, out, bang, the spare bottles already sitting. And you're going down the street again going, I could be with feet up in front of a fire here, kind of. But then when you finish it, you come in, you do that, and you maybe do a 20-minute break or something after that. And when you finish it, that sense of achievement, because you've been out there battling the elements. And I think it's better, and you say you've ticked it off. It's unlikely you're probably going to get the weather just as bad on the day, but you've just said, well, if I can get through a day like that, you can get through a day on race day when it's not unlikely to be as bad as that, So yeah, look, I think those long days and tough days in the weather, look, we're not guaranteed weather here, as our summer has shown us, and you think of people maybe would book races later on in the year so they get a good bit of training during the summer, as opposed to some of the earlier races where you're going to be, battling through the sort of winter and spring, cold and wet. So people have been struggling with weather and stuff like that, and trying to get out and do things. So yeah, that's when you really make your mark in terms of your training.
You've said something there that I want to pick up on as well, with regards to having come through a particularly difficult training day and having that sense of achievement, because it's something that maybe we haven't talked about on the podcast to date, but it's just actually come into my mind there now, just from what you're saying. And we need to really celebrate those victories throughout that journey. And I think when we reflect back on our training blocks running in the run-up to an Ironman event, we have put ourselves through some stuff. I remember the sense of achievement, having swam for 3 kilometers the first time I did that. And then when I swam to 3.5 kilometers, again I was buzzing. And when I got up to 4 kilometers in the swim, I was really, really excited because now I knew that I had to swim. You know, I knew I could
Yeah.
do swim anyway, but to do a 4 kilometer swim cemented it. And similarly with the runs and the rains and, you know, doing long bikes over hilly courses, you know, and those wee sort of many wins along the way are
Yeah.
all they all contribute to that sense of confidence and self-belief whenever you hit the start line.
Absolutely. And look, as a coach, you know, I would encourage people to kind of set goals, mini goals like that. So you always have the end goal is get across the line Ironman in a specific time. So some people it's compete or complete, and that it doesn't matter. It's just get across the line or a time. But if you don't have stuff in that, maybe if people are doing like a 9 month training block or whatever it may be, depending on where they're coming from, 0 to 9 months is a long time. If you have nothing in between to kind of drive you on and motivate you, and your motivation will go up and down. So whether it's put races in, practice races, B races, half irons, metric training days, which we have found really good with working with the club. Things like that, you know, you need those, or just a goal. So you stick a goal in Training Peaks. I want to get, you know, sub whatever, you know, in a 5K, 10K. I would always encourage people to set one goal a month, a mini goal, just so you have something short-term goal. You'll keep your eye on the long-term one, but I think you need those, what I call mini motivators to keep you going. You know, it's really, really important. That's when the motivation, because first couple of months, you're like, oh, great, I'm, you know, training Ironman in 2, 3, 4 months, and then it starts becoming a bit more of a slog, volume's up, intensity's up, you know, when you get through that base build period, you know, and you need stuff like that to keep you going. As I say, whether it's just you're entering a half marathon, you know, you want to go, you know, sub 25, sub 25K, whatever that may be, but it's really, really important to have those regular goals. Otherwise, the motivation can drop, and sometimes it's very hard to get that back, you know, up to certain levels. It will go up and down. It's only natural because, look, we're all age groupers, we're with family, with work, with other problems and commitments around we'll have to deal with. So those things are going to impact our mood, are going to impact our, you know, our ability to train and everything like that. But to have those monthly or bi-monthly goals, whatever it needs to be, just to keep the focus there, I think is important for people who have set themselves that sort of big Ironman or similar goal.
No, I think that's sound advice, Neil. 100%, absolutely agree with that entirely. And I would always pepper sort of sprints, a half. I'll even put in like an obstacle run. I love doing obstacle runs, so I'll put an obstacle run in and keep the fingers crossed that I don't sprain my ankle running through a forest or jumping over a frame or something. But no, you're absolutely right. Mixing it up a wee bit too, and just reminding yourself. Plus, you also get to check in on your progress too, because you know this low sort of zone 2 in training actually makes you perform a lot better in those individual sort of races of, you know, where you're asking different demands from your body, like, so it's really, really good. It's all part of that journey, like, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is.
What about your second Ironman then? So you did Copenhagen. Where did you go to next then?
Yeah, so sort of quite quickly after that, I had a sort of list that I put together of Ironmans that I would say I wanted to do or I thought would be good to do. So in terms of where they were, how easy it was to get there, what the swim course was going to be like, because I'm conscious of a lot of races, or some races, especially sea swims, which you know, are either shortened or cancelled or anything like that. And I didn't want to rock up at a race, you have a big Ironman thing, and all of a sudden, well, you only have to swim 1K, and then you're back onto a full bike. So I wanted to sort of guarantee that, you know, weather wasn't going to, or sea conditions weren't going to impact on that. So Hamburg was kind of number 2 on my list after Copenhagen, and so I'd entered it for June of 23. And trained really well, probably the best block of training I've had in 3 or 4 years, and was in the shape of my life. And probably 3.5 weeks out, I got a touch what I thought was the flu, and a couple of days later, it was just symptoms getting worse and worse, and phoned the GP and says, "Look, there's a bit of pneumonia going about. Maybe go up to the hospital and get tested." And so went up there. Of course, the usual NHS is A&E at the minute hasn't been great, and sat for 12 hours waiting to get tested. To be honest, I was about to go home because I was just feeling that rough and come back the next morning. And I was called in. The doctor said, "Look, they took him bloods earlier on, but the long waiting he just says, look, yeah, you've got pneumonia. We're going to admit you to hospital. You've got very, very high markers in the blood, whatever, inflammation markers." And so straight away I said to him, "Will it be okay to do an Ironman in 3 weeks?" And he said, "I don't think you'll be doing anything for a few months, you know." So that was that. I was in hospital for around a week, just over a week. And it was rough, you know, and I was off. I don't think I started anything then for about 4 weeks. And super, and it was like a super easy turbo, just spinning the pedals, and heart rate and just sweat pouring out of me, kind of things. Heart rate was through the roof, and so it was just a real slow managing me sort of back in. And Mark, who's actually race director of Triathlon, you know, I was at a training camp, so I went on his training camp in Lanzarote in February, and then I agreed, look, he'd take me through to Ironman Hamburg. So I'm actually glad that, you know, I had Mark there, because I maybe would have jumped in and started too hard too early, kind of thing, whereas Mark sort of held me back and said, no, just look, we're all super easy stuff for a lot of weeks. And luckily I was able to sort of transfer then to Ironman Portugal in Cascais for October. So then it was just kind of a slow build, probably not the same sort of block of training that I'd put in. Like it took the guts of probably 4 months from heart rate to kind of get back to normal. Probably only back to normal about a couple of weeks before for Portugal. I had raced Tyrone, maybe not too wisely, that July, which was about 2.5 months after coming out of hospital. And I don't actually look back after the race, and my marathon heart rate was 96% zone 5. So now the pace was kind of a zone 4, low zone 4-ish kind of pace, but the heart rate was just, you know, good 10 to 15 beats higher than it should have been. And that kind of continued until really early October. The race was third week of October. So yeah, it was a different kind of race. Sea swim, which maybe and it's scored, of course, on the Atlantic coast. So it was a really big Irish crowd. I think it was in the WhatsApp group that Oliver Harkin had created. There was probably about 70 or 80 folks in it. So it was good. So we met up for a practice swim the day before and around the harbour. We didn't go out past the harbour walls and stuff. And yeah, travel and stuff was perfect. Nice hotel, and then race day. So there was a great video. I think it's on YouTube somewhere of the speech before. You know, so I have all the 70.3. So the 70.3s went off first, and then the Ironman race as well. And that speech was kind of, you know, as you talk about, you know, hers in the back of your neck standing up. You know, they had the Gladiator music playing in the background, and then the whole of your story, how you've been here and all that kind of stuff. And it was just amazing, you know. Looking around, there was tears rolling down people's faces and stuff, that kind of thing. It's just, people get so emotional. And yeah, swim was tough. So once we got out past the harbour, actually at our hotel, so we were probably about a mile down the road from the start, and you could, as we come into the hotel room, first time I said, "What's that noise?" And they open the door, it's massive waves crashing into the beach, you know. And then you go down to the street and there's tsunami warning signs, you know. And I was like, right, okay, what kind of swim is this going to be? You know, and these were like permanently fixed signs. It wasn't just like there. And so once we got out past the harbour walls, it was tough going, really rolled. Now, not breaking waves, because we're probably out 200 or 300 metres from land, but it was just a super rolling swim, you know, really, really getting thrown about quite a bit, you know, again, struggling to get on people's feet, if at all. You know, sighting was a big problem as well. So much so that I think it was a group, I think they were behind us, or in front of us, but they swam past. So it was basically like a straight out across and then back. They swam past that final turn buoy and swam out past it 200 or 300 meters. Now maybe there's obviously should have been kayakers there to kind of, but that's how bad it was. It was really difficult to see that. But yeah, the swim was slower than Copenhagen. Actually, it was probably in much better swim shape than it was the previous year. And then you're probably about 800-meter run up to. It was quite a long run up to transition. The 70.3 transition was quite close by, but the Ironman one was difficult, and it was 800 meters up. And yeah, good bike. It's a 2-loop bike course there. A couple of reasonably big climbs on it. Not brutal, but just long. One of the best bits is going around. You get around the Estoril Formula One track, so you go around that twice, once per loop, and it's just like cycling on velvet. The tarmac there was absolutely perfect. Again, nutrition was pretty much dialed in there. I'd moved to the Precision Hydration Flow Gel, which was just out. I'd been using their gels and stuff, and I just happened to manage the Instagram account about a month previous and say, look, any chance, because they had announced they were releasing it probably about a week before the race, and it was really just a concentrated mix of their gels, which I thought would be really good. And the owner of the company came back to me and says, look, we can send you it, but don't put anything on social media because we're not going to release it. So I'd had 2 packs of that, prior to the race. Tried a bit of it out, which obviously nothing new in race days. I see the big thing not to do. So, and that was great. So that flow gel was really, really good. I used that actually in Tyrone as well. It's great, really good stuff. And yeah, decent bike, and the run was tough. I found the run really tough. Again, my foot sort of playing up again. It was a 3-lap route. I think they might have changed it to 4. So because we'd started because October, and we weren't in the water after 9 o'clock, which is quite because the 70.3 was on before. So organisational wise, probably think that they mixed that up. Probably should have had the Ironman in first and then let the 70.3s go. Because actually on the first loop of the bike, once we started, because you go out, come down off the sort of climbs, and then it's a flat sort of TT out into Lisbon and back. But the traffic wise and big massive groups drafting 70.3ers, as we were flying past them as well. So yeah, that was difficult enough. The run, as I say, 3-loop, you go kind of in the town and back out the other direction of the coast. And first loop was okay because it's daylight, and again it's warm, and you're dousing yourself in water to keep warm and stuff. And then the second loop, the sun went down pretty quickly, and as you're going out that road again, sort of for the second loop, there's no lights, so it was pretty pitch black at times, and all you could hear was the Atlantic waves crashing. And it was a bit grim, to be honest with you, and of course, like when you get into the sort of latter stage of an Ironman, you see all sorts of things, people stretching, or seizing up and throwing up, and it was a really tough mentally run. So like, yeah, came across the line. I was a bit time-wise, was a bit down in Copenhagen, but my body just probably still wasn't quite right. After pneumonia, and a tougher course as well. But yeah, look, I was just overall pleased to get under the 12 hours in that one, So that was, it was a lot tougher than Copenhagen for a couple of different reasons,
So you managed a better time then in Portugal?
No, Portugal was I think Portugal was 11:45, and it was 11:17 in Copenhagen.
Absolutely fantastic times. Absolutely unreal. Especially with Portugal. A lot of our guys in the club went out to Portugal there last year, and there's quite a number of them going again this year.
Yeah,
they were talking about the race, and what you're describing there. The elevation on the bike is obviously it's just another example of there's no 2 Ironman events the same. In terms of elevation, in terms of that sheltered swim that you experienced initially in Copenhagen, compared to the rolling sea in Portugal, so absolutely amazing. You got round both of those super times. Fantastic. Yeah. Well done, Neil. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, I mean, I think sub 12 is always a target for people, and that was a target for Copenhagen, and And actually, probably if I didn't have the issue when we were back on the run in Copenhagen, I would have been under 11. Now, I mean, that would have been dreamland, but even then, 11, 17, geez, I was absolutely over the moon with that. So yeah, look, I think Cascais was just kind of, wouldn't say getting round it, but just, I was conscious of the fact that, the sort of illness and being hospitalised early on in the year, like don't go super hard here, don't push yourself if you needed to kind of walk a little bit at times. I just did that, I was just conscious, you could probably Tyrone, what you did it probably too hard a pace, I think. At a bit more caution then with Cascais then,
You've already discussed there and shared some of the hurdles, personal hurdles and health hurdles that you had to overcome. And you've demonstrated a good level of both resilience and insight into your body and how to overcome those types of things. So your fitness and your commitment currently isn't in question as far as I can see, but I'm interested to find out if we go back in time before triathlon, because if I'm right, you weren't always that super clued in fitness person that you are today. Would I be right? Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah. I've came to this kind of fairly late on. Obviously in school and stuff like that. Was a fair bit of sport. Did a bit of cross country with the school and stuff like that. No great level, to be honest. And from an early age, actually, probably younger teenager, maybe I'd always had chest problems, had asthma, was on and off inhalers at times. I did have pneumonia actually when I was 16, 17, as well. So I've always had respiratory issues, which have probably put me off, committing to any sort of sport like that. I played a bit of five-a-side, 20s and 30s, maybe once a week, but nothing really at all, probably until my mid to late 30s when I started taking things a little bit kind of seriously. I'd bought a bike around 2012, so I think a lot of people had got inspired by Bradley Wiggins winning the Tour of France, and then a couple of weeks later, the Olympics as well. So went up to Decathlon, got their cheapest road bike at 300 quid or whatever it was. And just got out on the road with a few mates, just coffee rides on a Sunday morning, but nothing else. And there was a little bit of, my brother was involved in a local running club here in Mollusk, as were a couple of my mates. And the kids then were sort of wanted to join. They had a junior section. Then, of course, the thing is, Dad can join as well. And the next thing you know, you get roped into doing a few sessions there. Parkrun as well, I think, has probably been a big motivator as well. So brother, he was involved in local park runs as well. So I think looking back, my first park run that was 34 minutes. With a good bit of walk running that, and look quickly, like your times will come down. If you're coming in at that level and haven't done anything, once you start getting a bit of consistency in any sort of training, you'll see you start seeing some really good gains in terms of times and stuff like that. But again, nothing. I started just running with a club, some 5Ks, 10Ks. I didn't do my first half marathon, I think, until 2018 probably. So a lot of people around me were doing marathons and doing regular sort of stuff like that. I just really hadn't. I always thought, God, I'd love to do something like that, but always something held me back, It was just a fear of failure or something like that. So that's it. I kind of brought me up to around 2017, 2018. And then the local council was running a try. And I've been watching triathlon for years. You see it in the Olympics, watching maybe a little bit of the Kona stuff, and I just thought, I'd love to do that. I can run, I can bike, but I can't swim. Literally could not swim, so I'd never learned to swim properly as a kid. And I think when you talk to a lot of people, when you start talking about doing triathlon, is they could say it's either the bike or the swim, but mostly the swim. They say, well, geez, I can't swim. Or I really don't like getting out on the bike on the road. They're a bit fearful of whatever, And I just said, look, I'm going to do this. They're going to take us through. There was an 8-week training program. I think I went down maybe a week or two before I got into the pool, watched some YouTube videos, tried to do a little bit. But I barely, on the first night I had swim, I barely got to the end of the pool, blowing out my rear end after 25 metres, and but look, you can progress it quite quickly. So we were swimming 2 or 3 times a week there. It was when the try the end of it was a pool swim anyway. So we had done, I think it was a 500-metre time trial up in Antrim swimming pool, and that gives you a bit of confidence. You can get through 500, but I've only sticking over 250 in the end of that. So, so I mean, it's not quite similar to Copenhagen actually. That coming across that, doing that thing, and coming across that line. And actually, we came across that line hand in hand with one of the guys we had met and still a member of the club and a good friend now. Me and him came across the line hand in hand. We didn't care about time. This was just completing it, And again, just that kind of elation of going, right, I've done it. I can do this kind of a thing, And that then kind of started forming a plan of, right, okay, if we want to do something like this, we want to do a big thing. Always had an inkling of an Ironman, but then once you get that sprint done, you go, well, you're just kind of lumping volume and kind of distance and more things onto that. So if I could do 750 in the pool, and then sort of, thinking about what that long-term plan would look like. But a couple of bumps along the way, certainly in terms of that. I think it was only a few weeks after. So I think that try was maybe the end of April. So a few of us had entered Crooked Lake, which was about 4 or 5 weeks after it, and we'd been going during the try over to Let's Go Hydro. They had quite a big, at that time, maybe about a 900-metre loop. So we went over there. Danny went over there on Thursday night, maybe swim 2 loops, maybe up to sort of 2K kind of distance. And I did that the Saturday before Crooked Lake, so the Thursday before Crooked Lake. I'm done with 4 or 5s went over, had a bit of a trial, and swam 2K on the Thursday night down to Let's Go Hydro for the first open water try on the Saturday. And I just got taken in by the whole occasion. I forgot, no acclimatisation swim, anything like that. As we talked about earlier on, it was a mass start. So as a swimmer who had only learned to swim, properly, and I wouldn't say properly, but, to some level of performance in the last few weeks, floating in a murky lake, waiting for the gun to go, and then a washing machine start. It just was everything, you could do wrong in preparation for a swim. I did do wrong. So I say I didn't know acclimatisation, no warm-up swim. The adrenaline was up because it was race day, and the floating start, which I hated. So all those things combined, it was about 100 metres out, and all of a sudden I started feeling this tingling coming from my toes and coming up through my body, and all of a sudden I had to put my head out of the water. I was, sort of hyperventilating almost, and I never had experienced anything like this before. And you think having a panic attack's bad enough, having it in the middle of a sort of deep, murky lake when you're not a great swimmer is probably not the best place in the world to be having something like that. So luckily, one of sort of the safety kayakers had seen it was in a bit of bother. He had come over. I sort of grabbed onto the. I almost pulled him in, obviously, you know what I mean? He almost tipped over and sort of chatting away, and says, look, it was quite common, trying to talk me around. And I tried to get going again another couple of times, and every time I put my face in the water, it was like someone was in there pushing my face out of the water. I just could not keep it in. And then there's a safety motorboat come over, and again, they were trying to get me going really, really good. And I spoke to the guys afterwards and thanked them for it. But I just said, look, that's it. So I was pulled into the safety boat. The swim finished, and then they kind of dropped me off at the jetty. And I was just sort of walking down and transition, slowly taking me, and one of the marshals or the race director, and might have been said, well, what happened, and told her. He says, well, look, if you want to continue the bike and run, go ahead and do it. We'll not give you a time, but at least you can kind of get through it. So I did that, but to be honest with you, I was just, energy was just completely zapped. Going through something like that, it just completely drained me. And then, of course, you start thinking, well, geez, all these big plans that I have, if I can't complete 750 without getting pulled in the safety boat because of panic, so you start thinking, and you're in the depths of despair and stuff. But start talking to people, and you do find out it's a reasonably common thing for that to happen to people, and then there's techniques you can do. There's obviously better preparation, but if it does happen again, then you can learn to deal with it. So, and actually something similar did happen. I'd raced in Mallorca, I think it was back in 2019. which challenged Pagara 70.3. And so again, did the usual stuff around the day before for practice swim in the bay. It was like a lake, perfect, really, really nice. And you go around and race morning, and it's like Hawaii 5-0, big breakers. I'm standing there thinking, they're gonna cancel this, they're gonna do a run instead or something. And next thing you hear, no, the swim's going ahead. But I did get in for warm up. Once you get through the sort of big breakers, it wasn't so bad, but still rolling all the way out. And then you're standing in your pens waiting to go through, and you see the pros go off first, and they're jumping in and getting walloped back by the waves, kind of a thing, and you stand there going, geez, this is going to be rough as hell. So anyway, we started and go through, and I was probably only about 100 metres out, and one of the wave that just hit me, it kind of knocked me off a little bit. It wasn't sort of straight on to the next one, and then the next one caught me and just grabbed me and pulled me under. It kind of rolled a little bit, swallowed a load of water, and come up. And the next thing you know, the next wave's coming on top of you, so you're going, Jesus, and then the panic started coming again. So you kind of lose your bearings a little bit, turning around, going, actually, where's the beach? Where's the thing? And I'd remembered actually a club mate had said, look, if you get into this, just get your head in the water, blow bubbles really slowly, and that kind of worked. I was able to kind of get going again, and that swim was just a straight out across and back, 1900. There was no Aussie exit. And as I was swimming out, I could see a couple of people swimming the opposite direction with the same coloured caps on. I thought, hold on, am I going the wrong direction? Am I swimming back in? And it turned out, no, they just sort of bent it and said, no, it's not for us. We're going back in. And so when I went out and round, and then as I was coming out of the beach, my wife got a great photo of me just doing this massive, just puff of going, geez, I'm so glad that's finished. And I seen a bit of commotion then to the left-hand side, probably about 50 metres away, and didn't think anything of it. Back and I got into tea in the transition, got on the bike, and I had a horrible race because I had that much salt water in my belly. I couldn't get any gels or anything into me. It just, it wasn't being sick or anything, but I just knew my belly was just full. And probably looking back, I should have just emptied my belly, 2 fingers down the throat maybe, and kind of done that. So, it was a really, really slow race. But again, I just thought, get across the line. And it was only actually, we were sitting in the restaurant that night, I had the finisher T-shirt on and sort of half celebrating, and the waiter says, "Oh, you do the race today?" Yeah. He says, there was an Englishman that died during the swim. So that kind of was like, okay, you kind of, now, like a lot of these things, people probably, there's an underlying issue there that impacted that, but you kind of go, I'm out here swimming, wife and kids are on the beach, in rough waters. I kind of need to be better at this, and so like I was then, I started doing some one-to-one stuff with David, who took me through Copenhagen, video analysis, swimming in an endless pool, and that really, kind of brought me on a level. Now you'll plateau again after that, but it definitely made me, get better at swimming, be more confident in the water, get in open water more for just acclimatization, more training in open water. And I've had a couple of rough races after that, and dealt with them a lot better, just better prep, and get in and everything like that. But when you see something like that happening, it definitely sort of says, you're right, okay, look, this is something you need to be spending a bit more time and get more confident in, so you can enjoy it. Some of them things that wasn't really an enjoyable swim, and you're swimming around, your body's heaving, trying to get the salt water out of it, and you're just getting thrown all about the place. Maybe not making this triathlon sound like a sport that most people, but you're going to get challenging conditions like that, and you just need to be able to deal with them. Deal with them better. Because you've paid money, especially if it's a local race, and you can maybe bin it and get in the car and drive home, and you haven't spent too much money on it. But if you're investing time and money to go to somewhere, you're bringing a family out with you, you're paying hotels and everything else around that, that's a big commitment, as well as the financial commitment and the training commitment as well. So be the best person you can be in that race, but yeah, that was a bit of a wake up moment, I think, for me, that one.
It's something that we haven't talked about or really discussed on the podcast today, but it's worth maybe just spending a wee bit of time on that topic. I mean, I did my first Ironman was Ironman Ireland in Cork, and obviously there was big issues in relation to that swim and ongoing sort of inquiries. I'm not really going to go into that, but suffice to say that on the day it was very choppy. Um, Conditions were very challenging. Waves were very big. Visibility was very poor, etc. But I suppose if someone's thinking about maybe doing triathlon, and they are coming to it from a similar position from yourself, whereby they're learning to swim and then they're trying to build their confidence in the swim, one thing that you just can't underestimate, in my opinion, is the sea, because the sea is relentless. It is powerful, and when it's kicking up, it will win.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
So I'm quite fortunate in that I had spent a lot of time at the coast, and one of the things that I used to love, even from childhood memories, was messing about in the surf in Rossnowla Beach. And I remember standing in the water with my dad and the waves coming in, the breakers coming in, and Dad would be crouched down. So I would be at eye level and there would be a wave. I perceived this massive wave. It may have only been 3 feet high, but whenever you're only 5, it looks like a bloody tidal wave.
Yeah.
And then at the last minute, he would jump me up in the air and lift me above it and kee-ho and roar and laugh. But it got me really used to the roughness. I'd spent a lot of time in the coast jumping off the piers and cliffs and messing about. I did a lot of scuba diving and a lot of things like that as well. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to do a sea swim and you're not used to being in the sea, you really need to factor that in as early as possible in your training program. You need to become okay with not being okay in the sea. And for me, it's about maintaining a relaxed mind, because in the middle of a swell or in the middle of a wave and salt water, there's a lot of things against you. It's while important to feel that you've got a level of control. If you can control your breath and your heart rate in that, and remain sort of clued in and switched on in your mind, then you should be able to navigate that. But to go in there maybe not prepared and hoping for the best on a choppy day, it can bite you. It really can. Yeah. The Cork experience, and I told this in the book. When I was chatting with my clubmate Jared, I told him that we're going to get tossed around here like a pair of rag dolls. We're going to be like a piece of driftwood, and we're just going to get up and down and left and right. And I said to him, before we go in here, Jared, I want you to try and remember back to whenever you were a kid and you're at your first fairground and you're spinning around and you're going up and down. Imagine you're on a roller coaster, and every time the sea lifts us up, you'd be thinking yeehaw, and as it's throwing us down, you're woohoo. You're kind of nearly getting into an infantile, sort of childish, excited frame of mind, and just really attempting to enjoy that, but understanding that that's coming. So we were already clued in that this was going to be happening, and whenever it inevitably then did happen, it just helped us to maintain a level of relaxation.
That's exactly right. I mean, that visualization you've just described there, that's a real good, whether it's that or another venue or anything else, that visualization element in terms of race prep and swim prep particularly is really important. So if you get in the wrong frame of mind, if you get in there with a negative frame of mind, going, geez, I'm going to get thrown out here like a rag doll in a washing machine, I'm going to struggle to get out, I'm going to, so you're ready in the wrong type of mindset. Whereas if you said, if you try and put a positive spin on it, it's going to help. It really is going to help with that mental aspect of trying to get through those difficult conditions.
So thanks for bringing that up. I think it's worthwhile talking about that. What I was going to say then was in relation to your journey. So, you've had a few ups and downs there and a few hairy moments in the swims, and you've come from being asthmatic as a child, and probably doing the rest of the stuff that we all did, smoking and boozing and doing all the rest of the stuff. but you've done it. Do you know what I mean? You've come through it, and I guess that's why I do what I do now. This podcast is all about sort of showing that ordinary guys like you and I that are, you know, regular 5'10s, and we just want to maybe better ourselves. That, you know, why shouldn't we? Do you know what I mean? If I can do it and you can do it, there's nothing stopping anybody doing it. What's your
Exactly. And
thought?
I'd say to people, they always say, "Oh, that's an amazing thing you've done." I would say, "Well, yeah, well," I says, "but anyone can do it. Not everyone wants to do it, but you know, most people who have a reasonable sort of athletic ability, you know, and are capable of doing it, could do it. You know, they might not want to do it. They might not want. Might just say, well, okay, I'll go to 70.3s or even just sprints and Olympics. I'm not interested in doing the longer stuff." And you get that with runners as well. Not every runner is a marathon runner or ultra marathon runner or anything like that. People have just different targets. For me, I just wanted to hit that one big thing and then see where it took me. I had no intention of maybe doing 2, 3, 4, whatever it'll finish at or whatever that, you know. But I just got the bug for triathlon, and I'm still racing sprints. I'm still racing the Olympics. 70.3. 70.3 is probably my favourite. You know, to be honest with you, it's something you don't have to go eyeballs out kind of all the way through the race. You can kind of half relax into it. Whereas, you know, the Ironman is, yeah, it's a long day out, you know, but, you know, it's still a great experience. But 70.3s is, yeah, probably be my favourite.
The other thing then, Neil, is that you're obviously hooked on triathlon, and as much as you're still racing and still entering events, and that you're also now coaching. Tell me a wee bit more about the coaching part, and how people can maybe get in touch with you if they're looking for some help.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into coaching a little bit once we started up the club, Brown Shoes, in Newton Abbey here. So we needed people to, you know, start doing coaching qualifications. So I'd started out with Tri Leader, I think back in 2019 or so, and then we were. Obviously, there was 3 of us wanting to go for level 1. COVID came, we couldn't do it, and then all of a sudden, once we were sort of out or semi out of COVID, we were starting to then the TI were starting to release some of the coaching courses. So in 3 level 1, and generally you're supposed to have a 2-year gap between level 1 and level 2, just to get some real good coaching experience, and then you go up to the next level. But because of COVID, they kind of done an accelerated program, and most of the group who were on the level 1 went through to the level 2 together, so it was really good. So we're still in contact with a lot of those people. Went on training camp Lanzarote with a few of them. You know, so I'm still close with a lot of that crew, because we spent a lot of time together. Especially the level 2, and that's 5 full days, like 2.5 weekends plus 30 to 40 hours on each level, level 2, in terms of the online stuff and everything else you have to do. So it's quite a big commitment in terms of that. So yeah, and then, you know, I know a few people then started coaching doing 1-to-1. I'd always thought I'd do something like that maybe a bit later on, once I've had more racing experience, because I thought, you know, can you really talk the talk in terms of this? You know, a lot of stuff, if you haven't done some of the... So I didn't want to take people through Ironman until I'd done one myself and experienced it and had that kind of first go of learning, let's say, behind me. And so, yeah, this year, so I kind of tentatively kind of launched a coaching business, Elevate Triathlon. So I took a real small number of people on, and really not making, you know, at a very low cost to them. So I didn't want to, you know, start asking for big monthly fees if all of a sudden I couldn't deliver what I was expecting to deliver. I have a full-time job, I have a family, I have other commitments outside of work that I have to do, but it's worked really well, you know. So we're coming towards the end of the kind of first season. I've had I've had 4 people in total, a couple of people out of our club. I've had a friend of someone out of the club, and she's been doing really well in terms of podium and the age group and things like that. And then I took on a friend who is living out in the States, and someone training for 70.3 in Ironman. So a real kind of mixed bag in terms of that. And like, it's been a learning experience for me, a lot of hard work getting it set up, getting Training Peak set up and all the workouts and all built. And but yeah, look, I think, you know, I'll probably be looking to do the same next year. Again, low numbers. What I don't want to do is I've already had a few people asking me, and certainly one at least committed athlete starting in October. But I didn't want to commit, and start taking on large numbers, not delivering, and not what I expected I could deliver. So there's no point in doing that. I would only start taking a larger number on, if I maybe was going down to 3 or 4 days a week and work, and I had that time to be able to do it. Plus, I still want to do races myself. I have a big race next year that I'm really committed to. So it's about trying to fit all this stuff in around family life, around training, around work, and I can only do that with small numbers. So and to do that, I want to deliver a really good service. So I'm not going to take 10 people on and just throw training plans at them and talk to them once a month. I want to be giving them weekly feedback and being able to sort of react quite quickly if there's issues around illness, injuries, race planning, nutrition planning, whatever it needs to be. You kind of need that level of commitment to deliver, for me, a proper one-to-one coaching service. So yeah, it's a learning experience for me. I'm getting good feedback from the crew. There's been good results from them, PBs and everything like that. So I would hope that I can build on that over the next couple of years, and as I say, slightly increase the numbers year on year. But until that's I'll probably get to a level, and then it's a decision time as to what to do. Probably the real long term plan is that I would finish work up, retire, and have this on the side with maybe a larger group and stuff. But that's a way in the distance at the minute, kind of thing. But that's kind of the long term goal, So I mean, when I finish work, I've been working since I was 16, so I'm not going to stop at 60 or 65 and just put my feet up. You're going to need something to do to keep you busy, and why not do something that you really, really enjoy, and maybe supplement your earnings a little bit, as a bit of a bonus, But this will keep me busy anyway.
We'll put a wee link to your business anyway in the description of the podcast, but there's an understanding there that you're, for now anyway, keeping it kind of low key and understandably so. Before we finish, you've given me a wee teaser there in relation to your next big event. I know what your next big event is, but for the purposes of our listeners, what's this big event in 2025 that you're now sort of eyeing up?
Yeah, so look, I was lucky enough to get an entry for Challenge Roth in July next year. So that, if anyone knows Roth and trying to get entry, it is extremely difficult to get into. The really only way of guaranteeing an entry is you turn up at Roth the day after the race. And you can queue up, but I think they get around 750 to 1,000 people the next day. So I think there's probably about 4,000 entries in total. A quarter of them go the day after the race if you're there in person. So, and I've heard stories of people travelling to Roth just to enter on that Monday, which is nuts. But it's become such a target, such a bucket list race for people. If you haven't seen some of the videos, especially going up Solar Hill, it's like going up the Alpe d'Huez on the Tour de France. It's 4 or 5 people deep. There's room for one bike with going up it, and the support like that all around the run course as well, and the finish in that big grandstand, purpose-built grandstand. No people have done it and just said absolutely amazing race to go out. So I think apart from Kona, it's probably number 2 on the list for a lot of people. It's really a fastest finger first on the week after the race. I think it was the 15th, Monday the 15th of July. It's only a couple of weeks ago. And you need to have like your Google or whatever it is, the browser set to autofill, copy paste your date of birth and hit the button and it's gone. So the rest of the 2,500 or 3,000 entries went in 20 seconds. It's nuts. Now there is, you can pay, there's other like maybe travel companies, sports travel companies, you can pay a package to go through it, but if you just want your entry and do your own travel and logistics, what I'm doing. So yeah, that's the big ticket one for next year. So I'll be using Velo Yellow actually for bike transport. Usually I have my own bike box and kind of like that to bring it myself, but Roth both to get to and the course itself is kind of really challenging logistically. So I've taken that kind of headache and stress out of dragging off a plane onto into Munich and then onto a train to Nuremberg and then trying to get it out to Roth and then getting it back to the hotel after the race. So I just thought, let's take that stress out of that whole trip, and I'll use Sean and Mark and the crew for that. So I know a few of our guys, clubs, and the other guys have used them for different races and really good service. So first time for me.
No, that's brilliant, and I look forward to following that journey online, and it's going to be one of those things, that you're never going to forget. It really is such an iconic thing. Anybody that I've spoken to that has been there, a few of our club mates have completed that race, and they have said that there's nothing like it. Even placing it above their experiences in Kona. So enjoy that, soak that up, and I wish you the very, very best in terms of your training. Hopefully the old chest hangs together and you don't get a third bout of pneumonia or anything like that. But no, you're in good shape. You're in good nick. You're in a good way of going. I'm sure it'll be a perfect journey. Neil, thank you very much for sharing your journey. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And I just wanted to thank you and wish you all the very best for your future training, and keep safe and enjoy Roth.
I will do. And thanks for inviting me on, Mike. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you and take care.